thank you, Bill, for being with us today. We are grateful and excited and honored to have you with us. Just to give you a little background of who we are, we're a district book club for Victoria School District, and so we span all grades in terms of teachers and administrators, and we've come together around a question around technology, which I know that we've shared with you. In fact, we shared that question with you at our Summer Institute, and that is, how will technology enhance and amplify our pedagogy to support high levels of achievement for all learners? So we've really used that question all year, starting in the summer and all year, as a touchstone. And so all resources and conversations and action research teams, whenever we come together, we look to that question to ask whether or not what we're doing is really enhancing the pedagogy.
Sure. So
this particular group has come together around that question, and we're using your book and Adam Gary's, the book that you co-authored with him,
sure.
To investigate and chat and have professional dialogue about and share stories of implementation. So thank you for taking part. We thought we'd just let you start right away. I don't know if everyone here knows that you've got a little, how old is she now?
My daughter's 2.5, and I'm responsible for putting her to bed tonight.
That's right. We all get that. Totally get it. So they don't necessarily know that you are doing the bedtime routine tonight, and this is your volunteering your time. We really appreciate that. So I'm not going to talk a lot.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Ask questions and let you do all the talking, because we're excited to hear from you.
Yeah.
We thought we'd just let you start off with maybe talking about, you wrote this book a year ago, and what was your thinking behind, the motivation behind writing the book? And as time has passed and technology is changing so rapidly, what does this mean for you? The work that you've done, what does it mean for you now, and or what does it look like in your grade 6 class in North Carolina?
Yeah, well, in all sincerity, thanks for having me. Every time that somebody's excited about any of the work that I do, I'm just tickled. I'm a regular 6th grade teacher. I teach science to 12-year-olds. And so to find out that people think that anything that I've written has resonance is pretty cool. So I'm happy to be here. You asked why I wrote the book, or like what was the thinking behind the book, and this is not flattery to you at all, but it's your key touchstone question that causes me to write my book. And of course, I didn't know about your touchstone question. That wasn't something that that I had experience with. We've only met one time in August. But the thinking behind your question is brilliant, because you put technology first. Oh, I said it wrong. You put skills first, and you put technology second. You put pedagogy first, and you put technology second. You recognize and understand that it's technology that serves pedagogy, not pedagogy that serves technology. It's not the other way around. And I just think that's really cool. And I think that was missing in conversations about teaching and learning with technology. I mean, there was a lot of people talking about, well, what do you do with whiteboards, and well, what do you do with iPads and that kind of stuff, but there wasn't a whole lot of people that were talking about the kind of skills that I think matter. And so, for me, it became a challenge almost of how can I show that pedagogy and good teaching still has primacy in the teaching and learning equation, and how can I show that technology can be used to support pedagogy, but technology in and of itself isn't pedagogy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You also asked, how have things changed in the 1.5 years since I've written the book? And I think there's a really neat answer to that. And the answer is, things haven't changed all that much. Because the kind of skills that I care about, like in the kind of skills that are in my book, they don't change. Kids today need to learn how to manage information. Kids today need to learn how to collaborate. They need to learn how to engage in meaningful conversations with their peers. They need to learn how to use conversations with their peers to learn with each other. They need to learn how to problem solve. Those skills haven't changed. The only thing that's changed for me in my own classroom is maybe the tools that I use, or maybe the activities that I've developed to introduce to my students. But the teaching itself and the skills themselves haven't changed. And I think that's something that people need to know, is that makes technology a lot more approachable for teachers and for people that are new to technology, because we've always taught kids how to engage in meaningful conversations. We've always believed that it's important for kids to learn how to manage and judge information. Those skills aren't new. It's just the tools that we use to introduce kids to those skills. And so for me in the last 2 years, nothing's really changed. I'm still teaching the exact same skills. Maybe the tools that I'm using or the activities that I'm introducing have changed, but the skills remain the same, and I think that's important for people to remember.
Okay, thank you. One of the questions that came from Ingrid, should our energies be spent on trying to outfit entire classrooms with technology, or should we be focusing on what students have in their hands? What's the most relevant, up-to-date technology? Bring your own device.
Sure. I think that's a funny question. If anybody reads my blog, I just wrote a piece on my blog called "The Straw That Breaks My Professional Back," and I work in a school right now that is not. We don't have a heck of a lot of technology. I have 2 working computers in my classroom this quarter. Most of the time, I have 3. So and then we don't have we have 1 computer lab. Usually it's signed out months and months and months in advance. We have a mobile laptop cart, but all the keys have been ripped off over the last 6 years, so the computers don't work very well. So I don't work in a school that's tech heavy, and I also don't work in a district that has a whole heck of a lot of money laying around. I think I heard recently that we're getting $35,000 for technology this year, and it was funny because everybody in our school was thrilled, and I guess I'm thrilled too. I mean, it's more than $0, but it certainly isn't going to outfit our classroom with enough technology for me to really make a difference in what I'm already doing. I mean, that's just a couple of computers per classroom. And so my answer to your question is I very much want our students to be able to bring their own devices to class. And I don't care what those devices are. The more devices that come into our room, the more devices that kids can bring from home, the better able I am to get the kids to the internet. And if you kind of go and explore my book and the tools that are in there, I just need to get to the internet. Everything is internet based. Voicethread is a tool that I love to use, and it's internet based. If I can get the kids to the web, they can engage in Voicethread. We introduced kids to Digo today on my team. Digo is an information management tool. It's a social bookmarking tool. And that's web-based. All I need to do is get to the internet. That's it. I like to use Animoto to show kids how to make videos. And Animoto's web-based. All I got to do is get to the internet. The problem is I can't ever get to the internet, because we don't have enough devices. And our school, it's interesting. Somebody asked me, if you were to spend technology money on anything, what would it be? And my answer is a killer wireless network, and then let the kids bring their own devices to school. Because at least in my community, at least half of my students have some kind of wireless device that they can bring. Whether it's a handheld gaming system, whether it's an iTouch, whether it's an iPod of some kind, whether it's a netbook, whether it's a laptop. At least half my kids could bring devices in. Right now I have 2 computers in my classroom. That's it, 2. If half my students were bringing devices to school, we could get a heck of a lot more done. So my answer is, don't give me gadgets, give me wireless access and let the kids bring the gadgets. So.
Thank you. I don't know if you can hear, but throughout that your answer, we had some humming and hawing and sighs and reaction from the group. So
right.
I'm sure that your answer and that question will continue to come up. And so thanks for your input.
Yeah. Well, the challenge with bringing your own device, and I have to say this, especially if you have administrative type people in the room, I don't understand all the technical challenges. I don't understand all the technical challenges behind bring your own device. I don't understand all the legal challenges behind it. I'm sure that there's a risk behind allowing kids to get onto a wireless network where your district might have personal files stored. I mean, I get that there's those kinds of challenges and that they exist. But what I'm saying is, if we really believe in this kind of transforming our pedagogy with technology, if that's what we really believe in, then I kind of got to have technology. You got to give me tools. And I also get that our budget's busted. I mean, we don't have any extra money in North Carolina anyways, to outfit classrooms. And so if our budget is busted and we really do care about, transforming technology or transforming pedagogy with technology, then we got to do something. And I'm oftentimes, people throw up all the barriers, like, well, you haven't thought about this, and you haven't thought about this, and you haven't thought about this. I get that a lot. And my answer is, well, the only thing I am thinking about is how can I change teaching in my classroom? And if you can't give me the tools to do it because the budget is tight, I understand. But there's no excuse when 50% of my students could come to school with a device and we just don't make it happen for them. Like, I don't care what the hurdles are, figure it out, Like, if you want me to change my teaching, you've got to give me the tools to be able to do that. So.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. So this may tie in, and feel free to pop up and hand questions as they come to your mind. Maybe to them to Mary, or bring them right up, and I'll read them out to Bill. This one is from Mary. Your book seems to be a bridge between what students know about technology and what teachers know about good teaching. Could you expand on that?
Yeah.
So it's again. Sorry.
That's my favorite quote in the whole book. It's in the introduction somewhere. And we make this mistake of thinking that just because kids have grown up in a digital world that they know how to use digital tools for learning. And that's not true. That whole digital immigrant, digital native stuff, like I think that's flawed thinking. Because what it assumes is that just because a kid knows how to get on the internet, and just because a kid has a Facebook account, that he knows what to do with those tools in order to learn better. And that's just not the case. We're the expert learners. And unless we teach our students how to use the tools that they've embraced to learn, then we're not doing our job. I was talking with some teachers last week about Voicethread, and they looked at one of the Voicethread projects that my kids did, and they were like, my students could never do that. Like, there's no way that they could possibly interact in the kind of conversations that your kids do. How do you get your kids to interact in those conversations? And the answer is easy. I teach them how to do it. And I think the mistake we make is we assume that just because a kid can get onto Voicethread and create his own user icon and make a video post or an audio post, we assume that because he can do those technical things, that all of a sudden he's going to be this remarkable learner in Voicethread. And that's not the case. The skill of collaborative dialogue is something that kids don't automatically know. They're not born with that. They may be born with the inherent ability to find an on-off switch, but that doesn't mean that they know what to do in social spaces, or they know what to do with social tools in order to learn. So I just feel strongly that we've got to figure out the tools that they care about, because there's a bit of a motivation factor there. But we've got to figure out the tools that they care about, because the tools that they care about can make learning more efficient. And all we've got to do is we've got to show kids that those tools can be used more or for more than they're currently using them for. There's more to, I think the kids are good at social networking, and I want them to be good at social learning. And I think there's a difference that we are responsible for teaching them.
Thank you. Yeah, the explicit teaching piece is so important.
Right.
Appreciate that. Thank you. This is from Heather. Tell us about the most successful project you have completed with your students.
Like ever? Yeah. Wow.
Sky's the limit.
Yeah, seriously. There's a couple.
Yeah, just something that's been really, really successful that they really bought into, really want to do.
The thing that my kids love the most every year are Voicethread projects. And the reason that they love Voicethread projects is obvious. Kids are passionate about having opportunities to interact with each other. They want to talk to each other. They want to be social. I mean, we shush them 9,000 times a day, right? I think about my school, and the thing that I think is the funniest about middle schoolers is that middle schoolers will spend that 4 minutes that they have in between classes in the bathroom with one another. And like if you've ever been in a middle school bathroom, it's one of the most disgusting places on the planet. And so you think about, like, why would somebody willingly spend their time in a bathroom for 4 minutes, a disgusting bathroom? And the answer is they want to be able to talk to each other. They want to be able to interact. They want to be able to be social. That's what kids are, But there's not a whole lot of time for that in traditional classrooms, and I don't necessarily hold that against teachers. I mean, I know that my curriculum is massive, and so social learning opportunities just plain take more time. So giving kids social learning opportunities is hard to pull off in my classroom because I run out of time. I don't get through my whole curriculum. And so when I create Voicethread opportunities for my kids to interact with each other in Voicethread, they take off with it. If you go to any of the wikis that I have, and I'll make sure that Petra has all of the addresses to the various wikis that I have, but if you go check out my Voicethreads, you're going to see that there's thousands, that's exaggerated, there's hundreds of comments, and they're really, really detailed, and none of them are graded. If you ever look at one of my Voicethreads, nothing is graded, all of it is optional, and my kids are there anyways. Now, the trick is this. You can't just throw up a Voicethread and expect your kids to interact just because it's Voicethread. My kids aren't motivated by Voicethread the tool. My kids are motivated by the conversation with their peers around topics that they care about. The most successful Voicethreads that I've ever had I have one about hate. And we got into this conversation in my class about, like, why do people hate? Like, where does that come from? And we were looking at Northern Ireland and the Protestants and Catholics, the long-term fight between Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland. We were looking at Eastern Europe and the genocide that occurred there. We were talking about Hitler and the Jews and the Holocaust. And my kids were just really into this idea of, like, well, where does that come from? Like, where do people learn that level of hate? And the conversation that we had is pretty remarkable. You know, and it happened in Voicethread. And what I like to remind people is that my kids didn't participate because it was Voicethread. My kids participated because that idea of why do people hate really resonates with them. You know, that's something that kids care about. So don't assume that Voicethread or any digital tool is going to motivate your kids. It's the content that they care about. Voicethread just facilitates opportunities for them to interact with the content. Does that make sense?
Yes, and again, you're just saying in a different way that it really the tool isn't what is necessarily what motivates, is the content. And in that particular case, it sounds like you had a pretty powerful and relevant, essential question that they could hook their teeth into, no matter what content you were helping them process. You could come back to that.
And so that goes back to enhance and amplify pedagogy, right? The pedagogy is social learning matters. That's a pedagogical fact that I know is social learning matters. You know, another pedagogical fact that I know is that the content, this idea of why do people hate, is something that's in my curriculum and it matters to kids. Those are all pedagogical decisions. Now, how do I give them an opportunity to interact with that content using that instructional style? Well, my solution is Voicethread. So Voicethread is just the option that I use to enhance my pedagogy. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have a kind of a technical question around Voicethread while we're on it, and it comes from Carol, who's a grade 7 teacher in our district. She's also part of our Humanities Action Research team, and she spent the morning working through a lesson sequence using Voicethread, and actually worked through some of the things that you had created around the Hitler Youth.
Sure.
And went to your wiki. So her question after the morning and having engaging in your book is, what is the capacity of Voicethread if she was to for typed like a typed response or a recorded response?
You can do it all. Voicethread allows you to, when you're talking about responding, Voicethread allows participants to add a typewritten response, an audio recorded response, a video recorded response so that you can see your face while you're actually talking, and it also allows you to record responses from your cell phone. So, I mean, you can respond in pretty much any way you imagine. And that's one of the things that kids like. They like to experiment with those different types of responses. But I can tell you that, like, for me, I require my kids to do text responses most often. And the reason is because it supports a lot of our language arts goals. I want my kids to learn to articulate their thoughts in writing. And so having them do a text response, you know, kind of lets me facilitate that language arts goal as well. The other reason that I require them to do a text response lots of times is because it forces them to kind of revise and polish. You know, I have my kids write in Word before they ever put their comment in Voicethread, and I have them think through the writing that they want to do. Because if they do a recorded comment, lots of times it's unpolished. There'll be lots of ums and ahs. They won't kind of follow a thought from beginning to end. And so don't forget that what I care about is I want them to be able to articulate their thinking. Well, articulating your thinking sometimes requires some planning. And if you have them do text comments, then you're forcing them to do some of that planning. So you can do all those other types of comments, but I typically don't.
Right. Thank you. So there's no space limit on if I'm to comment, I can just keep going.
Sure. Right. There's no space limit on the comments that people add. There is space limit on it depends on the account you have, it depends on the type of account you have, all those other kinds of things. But in the very basic account, there is a limit to the number of threads you can have. And then the only other type of restriction there is, like Voicethread comments, you can only, or I'm sorry, I said that wrong, cell phone comments, you only get like 3 minutes. So the kids are always funny. They're like, oh, I can't wait to do a comment by, cell phone. And I'm like, yeah, well, you only get 3 minutes, so don't talk long, Hang up quick, so.
Yeah, thank you. I just have another question here that came from Doug. What do you do with kids who don't or cannot bring technology during class or work time?
That don't bring their own?
Yeah.
Okay, so my answer to that is this. First of all, I think that if a school were to go to a bring your own device program, I think that you would find that you'd get some devices. Who knows how many? You'd get some. In my case, it would be more than I currently have, because I have 2 devices. Like right now I have 2 working computers. So even if I only had 3 students bring in their own device, that brings me up to 5 working computers. So I'll take anything. To be perfectly honest, I'll take anything. If I were to get close, what I'd like to see my school do is that's where I'd like to see my school spend the $35,000 worth of tech money that we're going to get is buy me 5 devices that I can use in my classroom. Buy me 7 devices that I can use in my classroom. And then what I'll do is I'll set up student groups. I'll have 3 or 4 kids that are working together. Voicethread is a really good example. Sometimes when kids are participating in Voicethreads in my classroom, I have them work with one another on comments. Because then they're bouncing their thinking off of each other in a face-to-face way while they're crafting their responses. So I think my answer to the question would be, I would do what I've always done, and I would, use the resources that I had to break students into groups of whatever I could in order to be able to use the resources that were at hand. That was a really cryptic answer to say, I'd have them work in groups with as many devices as I could get. So.
Brilliant.
Did you like that?
Love it. I'm just going to move us just to chapter 3 that we're working on right now around digital storytelling.
Sure.
And this is a question, sorry, I'm feedback, sorry about that. I'm going to combine 2. How do digital stories provide evidence of deep learning that you're noticing in your students? And how can digital stories be used to support assessment for learning?
I think the first answer to the question is that, I think we're missing the boat in schools sometimes because I think we all understand that persuasion is important. I mean, I've been a language arts teacher I don't know if I've mentioned it, but I'm in my 20th year teaching, so I've been around the block. And I've been teaching persuasive essays for a long, long time. Written persuasion is something we've always done. What we forget is that visual persuasion is way more important in today's world than written persuasion is. And so while it's not in my curriculum, it's really interesting because in the language arts curriculum, at least here in North Carolina, there's nothing about crafting an influential visual message. And I just think that's a crime. Because, I think I read yesterday that something ridiculous like 80 hours or maybe it's 80 days of videos uploaded to YouTube every 24 hours. It's some insane number like that. People influence through visual messages today more than ever before. And so I think we need to teach kids how to do that. It's really fun to talk with kids about what goes into being influential in a visual. That it forces the kids to think about color. It forces them to think about tone. They have to choose images carefully, to see whether an image fits a particular mood. It's almost a higher level of persuasion because you've got to think carefully about how visual cues work with the message that you're trying to send. And I've had a lot of fun with it. I can tell you, you said what's the most successful project that you've ever done. Any kind of visual persuasion is a close second to Voicethread. The kids love playing with pictures, and they love playing with images, and they love talking about how influential is this message, how influential is this visual. Last but not least, I think it's really important because we have to teach kids how to use visual content and audio content appropriately. And visual projects give you the chance to do that. Our kids, if you had a student and you said, okay, can you go to a textbook or any book, a magazine, and just copy, 4 paragraphs, slap it in your essay and pretend like it's yours, every one of your students would be like, no, you can't do that. That's copyright. We'd get in trouble for that. And then you ask them, well, okay, where did you get the images for your last PowerPoint presentation? And their answer is, well, Google, of course. And see, there's a disconnect between, the idea of you have to fairly use copyright text, but the copyright in a kid's mind doesn't apply to audio or visual or video or photos. So I think digital projects give you the chance to teach kids a really important lesson that copyright applies to more than just text. And that's something that I really enjoy teaching my kids. If you haven't studied the Creative Commons, you really should. Spend time figuring out what Creative Commons is. It's in my book. I've written about it on my wikis. There's great videos available online. But teaching kids about Creative Commons content, I think, is one of the most responsible things that we can do as educators today to prepare our kids to be more responsible citizens tomorrow. So.
Thank you. How are we doing for time?
I've got about 5 to 7 more minutes.
Okay. Do we have another question from anyone I've got one here.
Sure.
Another one here. Since it's a timely topic, can you talk to us about Sopa and Pipa and how it might impact our work as teachers?
Well, it's a good example of copyright, right? So what Sopa and Pipa are designed to do is you've got the government saying, the U.S. government in particular, saying that we want to crack down on piracy of content. Like, we want to crack down on people that are sharing content that's copyright freely. And I think it plays a huge role in what we do as teachers because, number one, we've got to help our kids understand what's copyright and what's not. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean that you can use it any way that you want. So that's a really important lesson to talk to kids about. But we're also in a real gray area. I know that I'm personally frustrated simply because a lot of content creators don't really understand what they're doing when they share content online. I'll give you an example. CNN has a video that I use when I teach my kids about collaborative and competitive dialogue, and they've got it posted online with a share button. There's a little button in the corner that says share, right? And you can embed it, you can download it, you can get it in any copy you want. Well, I was doing a tech presentation last week, and I wanted to use that video. So I contacted CNN and I asked them if I had permission to use the video. I figured it was posted everywhere online and I had share buttons. I figured I could use it. Well, CNN was like, no, you can't use it. That's copyright and it's under protection and you have to pay me a fee in order to be able to use it. And it's just a really good example of, digital tools have allowed us to share everything. And people still haven't figured out what they want to share and how they want to share it and when they want to share it. And so there's like this gray area between what can I use and what can't I use and how do I ask permission if I want to use something. And I think that's what probably Sopa and Pipa mean for our students is let's start teaching them those lessons. I think it's a good opportunity for us to have conversations about what can you use, how can you use it, and then go ahead, walk through the process of figuring out how to be more responsible with content. Now, as an aside, and as a social studies teacher, I love conversation, and I teach science now, but I'm a social studies teacher, language arts teacher too. Done that for the majority of my career. I love the conversations about should the government censor the internet? Does that give too much power to any particular organization? Those are great themes. You can integrate those into a social studies class in no time. So.
Thank you. Another question that we received, do you have video kits posted?
The only video kit I have is I'm going to share my desktop for just a quick second. Let's see here. This will be fun. Let's see if it works. So I'll make sure that you, actually, this might help you write it down because this is bigger. The very top website up here at the top, plugusin.pbworks.com, that is another wiki that I use when I make presentations, and it's broken down by the chapters of my book. So like each chapter has its own page of resources, basically. And there's not everything on the wiki, like, you know, there's more in the book than there is in the wiki. But if you go and you check out the wiki, and this is where I am right now, it looks like this when you land on it. In the sidebar, there's a page called Exploring Visual Persuasion. And at the very bottom of that particular page, I'm going to wait for it to load, it's kind of dragging here. There we go. At the very bottom of that particular page is, and by the way, there's a visual I use with my students. When I'm talking about how do you capture people's attention, you know, we talk about this message, you know, like here you go, you got to crawl through their eyes. That'll get a middle schooler's attention. But there's by the way, there's a great video right here in the center about Creative Commons. So if you're just hearing the term Creative Commons for the first time, go watch this video. It'll introduce it to you. And then at the very bottom, there's a whole section here, an activity that I use with my students, where I ask them to create an influential slide about using technology in the classroom, like how they'd like to see their classroom change. And here at the top is a handout that includes a bunch of quotes about technology. You know, you talk about digital kits. One of the things I put in my digital kits is text-based content too. So it saves students time. They're able to find ideas that they can include in their visuals without having to go dig it all up on their own. And then down at the very bottom, there is a visual kit right here that goes along with that project that includes 61 different images that I think that kids could use to be able to create a nice visual about using technology to change teaching and learning. I used this last week with a group of 7th graders, and it was cool because in the span of 45 minutes, about 12 of them had created just remarkable slides about how they wanted teaching and learning to change. And I think that's an important lesson if you think about it from the standpoint of a teacher is the reason that we back away from projects using technology is we're afraid it's going to take, 5 days in order to pull it off. But if you put together a digital kit for your kids, like I did this in 45 minutes. I said, okay, guys, let's talk about what an influential message really looks like. We talked about the characteristics of an influential video. Or I'm sorry, an influential visual. And then I said, here's a collection of quotes, and here's a collection of really cool images. Go make a slide. Go make a PowerPoint slide, an influential visual, to change your teachers' minds about what should be done with technology. And 45 minutes later, they were done. So, by doing the legwork myself, I was able to get that project done quickly. It didn't intimidate me. That's the only one that I've got posted online. I've got another digital kit that I use with my kids when we talk about poverty, but that's not posted online right now.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure. I've got time for one more question. The bathwater's running.
Tap water, the bath time.
The bath time's running.
In your experience, are there more challenges to students or to teachers when creating digital stories, and why?
Digital stories in particular, I think there's more challenge for, I guess it would, I'm going to say it's equal challenge. It's a cop-out, isn't it? I'm going to sit right on the fence. Your students will have absolutely no trouble with the technology, but they'll tend to underestimate how much writing actually goes into a visual project. Like if you're trying to tell a digital story, you got to have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. You've got to think about like what's the tone of your piece. Those are things that your kids won't know how to do naturally. And so they'll sit down behind the computer and they'll start whipping pictures in and pulling out music clips, and they'll think that they're creating this wonderful digital story, but they'll be doing it with no real storytelling skill. Your teachers are going to be somewhat intimidated by the tool. Like they won't necessarily understand how to use the digital tool, but they're going to be a lot more comfortable pinpointing like what part of the story needs to change. Like I'll sit down with my kids and I'll say, I don't see a main idea in here. And they'll be like, yeah, it's a video. There's not a main idea.
Yeah.
And it's a really good, point because like as a teacher, I'm very comfortable saying, let's find the main idea. And I'm right about that. My kids don't get it though. Like they don't understand that a digital story requires the same components as a written story. So I would say it's probably equally hard, for teachers being willing to tackle the technical tasks, and for students to recognize that there's more than just the technical tasks involved in telling a digital story.
Thank you.
Yeah, no sweat.
So I guess we'll end with one final just open question and a thank you.
Sure.
The question is where to next for you? We feel like just incredibly blessed and challenged and fortunate that we've met you along the way, and
Sure.
we've been able to work with you since August. Bill, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, where are you going next? What are you looking into next, or
Yeah.
what's on the horizon for you?
Right. Well, first, I have to tell you that I'm inspired every time that I work with your district. And the reason for that is because, depending on how far you've gotten, like I haven't been with you, so like I don't know how far you've gotten, but you're doing the right things. When you keep pedagogy in the primary spot, you're doing the right things. And that's where districts screw it up all the time. So I feel just as, I'm energized when I talk to you. When I see a district doing it right, it leaves me energized. So thank you as well. Where do I go next? Well, let's see. I've got 20 years in the classroom. So my goal is to retire a full-time classroom teacher. I think there's something noble about the fact that I'm still a full-time classroom teacher. I have chills right now because I know that I'm still making a difference in the lives of kids, and that's all I've ever really wanted to do. And so, and I love standing in front of audiences, and I love saying, I'm still a full-time practicing classroom teacher. Whatever you tell me, I deal with too, I think when people leave the classroom, sometimes they forget that. I think there's an expiration date when you leave the classroom. I think your understanding of what's practical and what's doable and what's real changes when you leave. And so I love the credibility that comes from staying in the classroom, but more importantly, I just love the kids. And I think there's something noble in being able to say that I will retire as a full-time classroom teacher, and that's kind of my goal. And that's 10 years from now. Actually, I could probably give you the days if you wanted me to. It's been a long day today. The kids were squirrels, so.
Yeah. I hear you on that. Well, we certainly appreciate the fact that you've got this goal, and it gives you shivers. So we've got a room full of teachers and administrators here that still get shivers with from the work that they do. So thank you for sharing that. We hope you reach your goal.
Yeah, me too.
And that we continue to be able to work with you and keep in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time again. You've given us a lot to talk about. We have actually, you probably can't see, I wish I could show you, just a beautiful spread of food, and we've all got your book here.
Nice.
And I'm sure we'll pull up some of the links, your wiki that you've pointed out again, and maybe we'll show the video after we leave you. And so the conversation will carry on here, and I hope you enjoy your nighttime routine with your daughter.
Yeah,
She's a lucky girl.
bedtime is my favorite part of the day. So,
Right on.
bye now. Thanks so much for your help. See you now. See you soon.